17 orbital cycles in the mining industry teaches you one thing above all else. Never trust a species that volunteers for Titan IX. I have watched 463 different beings attempt to extract compression crystals from that nightmare planet, and the survival rate sits at a spectacular 0.03%. That is not a rounding error. Exactly 2 creatures made it back alive, and both of them needed so many cybernetic replacements that calling them survivors feels generous. One of them still has panic attacks when the atmospheric pressure drops below standard. So when Bavron, our station administrator, called me into his office and told me we had another contractor arriving, I laughed. Actually laughed, right in his face. His eye stalks drooped in that way they do when he is profoundly exhausted by the universe. Qualix, I understand your skepticism, Bavron said, his translator struggling with his species' particular brand of resignation. However, this contractor comes highly recommended. Apparently, she has experience in extreme pressure environments. They all have experience, I replied, leaning back in the chair that was definitely not designed for Varkothian anatomy. Dex had experience. He lasted 6 minutes before his organs started leaking out of his ears. Literally, I had to file that incident report in triplicate. Bavron made that gurgling sound that passes for a sigh among the Thexians. This one is different. She is from Earth. I stopped laughing. Earth, I repeated slowly. The Death World? The planet where everything is trying to kill everything else, including the weather, the animals, and apparently the plants. The very same, Bavron confirmed, pulling up the contract on his display screen. Her name is Elena. She specialized in something called deep-sea pressure mining before her planet joined the consortium. According to her references, she once worked at depths that would crush our equipment like it was made of paper. Then her references are lying, I said flatly. Nobody survives those pressures. That is basic physics. Biology has limits. Human biology apparently does not agree with your assessment of limits, Bavron said. She arrives in 2 hours. You will be her primary liaison and safety monitor. Safety monitor, I repeated, for a human going to Titan IX. Bavron, that is like being a moisture monitor for a star. There is nothing to monitor because there will be nothing left. But Bavron had already dismissed me, turning his attention to 17 other disasters waiting on his desk. I left his office and went straight to the observation deck, where Yilla was running diagnostic checks on the pressure suits. Yilla is a Korthine, which means she has about 6 more limbs than most species find comfortable, and she uses every single one of them when she is agitated. Did you hear? I asked her. About the human? Yilla's main vocal appendage clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme nervousness. Yes, I have been reviewing her equipment requests. Qualix, she wants to modify the pressure suit. Modify it. She sent over a list of alterations that violate approximately 47 safety protocols. Show me. Yilla pulled up the list on her datapad, and I felt my respiratory organs constrict. The human wanted to reduce the suit's pressure compensation systems, increase mobility at the expense of protection, and add what she called manual override controls that would let her disable safety features mid-operation. This is a death wish, I said quietly. She's planning to kill herself, and we are going to be accomplices. The legal department already cleared it, Yilla said, her limbs drooping. Apparently, humans have to sign waivers acknowledging that they are insane before they are allowed to do anything. It is standard procedure for their species. I should have walked away right then. I should have requested a transfer to literally any other station in the galaxy. But here's the thing about working in the mining industry for as long as I have. You develop a morbid sense of curiosity. You start wanting to see just how badly things can go wrong. So when Elena arrived at the docking bay, I was there waiting. The first thing that struck me was how small she was. Humans are not particularly large by galactic standards, but the images in her file had not prepared me for the reality. She stood maybe 1.70 meters tall, with dark hair pulled back in a practical configuration and eyes that were an unsettling shade of brown. She wore a standard consortium jumpsuit, and she was smiling. Actually smiling. "You must be Qualix," she said, extending her hand in that bizarre human greeting ritual. I touched it briefly, noting the surprising strength in her grip. "Thanks for babysitting me on this job. I promise I will try not to make too much of a mess." "You understand the mortality rate for Titan IX operations?" I asked, deciding to skip the pleasantries. "Oh yeah," Elena said, her smile widening. 99.97% fatal. I read the briefing. Fun stuff." "Fun?" I repeated. "You think certain death is fun?" "I think certain death is just death that has not met me yet," Elena replied, picking up her equipment bag like it weighed nothing. For the record, that bag was rated at 43 kilograms. "Where is my suit? I want to make some adjustments before we head down." I led her to the equipment bay, where Yilla was waiting with the modified pressure suit. It looked less like protective gear and more like a mechanical torture device, all reinforced joints and heavy plating. The original design could theoretically keep someone alive on Titan IX's surface for about 15 minutes before the pressure overwhelmed the compensation systems. Elena circled it once, twice, then started pointing at various components. "This stabilizer is going to restrict my shoulder movement. Can we relocate it? And these pressure release valves are in all the wrong places. If I need to vent excess pressure quickly, I will need them closer to my center of gravity." "If you need to vent pressure quickly, you will already be dead," Yilla said, all 6 of her limbs twitching. "Not if I vent it quickly enough," Elena countered cheerfully. "Look, I appreciate the concern, but I have done this before. Granted, not on an alien planet, but the principle is the same. Pressure is pressure. You just have to understand it, respect it, and then tell it to go screw itself." I looked at Yilla. Yilla looked at me. We both looked at Elena, who was already disassembling part of the suit with tools from her bag. "She is going to die," I said in Varkothian, which the human translator should not have been able to process. "Yep," Elena replied in perfect Varkothian, "but not today." That shut me up. Over the next hour, Elena modified the suit according to her specifications while explaining in excruciating detail exactly why each change made sense. The terrifying part was that her explanations were technically sound. Insane, but sound. She reduced protection in non-critical areas to increase mobility. She added manual controls that would let her adjust pressure compensation on the fly. She even installed what she called a panic button that would flood her bloodstream with a chemical cocktail designed to keep her conscious in extreme conditions. "That will kill you," Lilith, our medical officer, said when she saw the chemical specifications. "Only if I use it for more than 6 hours, Elena said. "I am planning on a 4-hour operation, 5 maximum. Plenty of safety margin." "There is no safety margin on Titan IX, I said. "The atmosphere will crush you flat within seconds if your suit fails." "Then I will make sure my suit does not fail," Elena said, sealing the final modification. She straightened, rolling her shoulders, and I heard several joints pop in a way that made me uncomfortable. "When do we drop?" "We?" I asked. "I am monitoring from the station. Right. When do I drop? I checked the orbital calculations. Titan 9 will be in optimal position in 3 hours. That gives you time to rest and prepare. Nah, Elena said, already climbing into the suit. Let us go now. The sooner I get down there, the sooner I can start pulling crystals. Besides, 3 hours from now, there will be a pressure front moving through the extraction zone. I want to beat it. That pressure front is exactly why we wait 3 hours, I explained slowly. It will kill you instantly. Only if I am still on the surface, Elena said. Her voice now filtered through the suit's communication system. She sounded tinny and distant, but I could still hear the smile in her words. I will be underground by then. Probably. Maybe. We will see how it goes. Torvak, our security officer, stepped forward. He is Hendari, built like a mobile fortress, and he had been watching the entire preparation with Maish. Growing alarm. Contractor Elena, I must advise against premature deployment. The risks are noted and ignored, Elena interrupted. Look, I get it. You all think I am crazy? You are probably right. But here's the thing about us humans. We spent millions of years evolving in an environment that was actively trying to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans. We survived by being stubborn, adaptable, and just a little bit insane. So when you tell me Titan 9 is deadly, what I hear is that it is just another day at the office. She sealed her helmet, and the suit pressurized with a hiss that sounded ominously final. Qualix, fire up the drop pod, Elena said. Let us see what this Deathworld has got. Against every instinct screaming at me to stop this madness, I activated the launch sequence. The drop pod sealed around Elena, locking into the deployment rail. Through the viewing port, I could see her giving me a thumbs up. A human gesture I had learned meant either confidence or sarcasm. Possibly both. All personnel, clear the launch bay, I announced over the station intercom. Preparing for Titan 9 deployment in 60 seconds. Yilla grabbed my arm with 3 of her limbs. Qualix, we are going to watch a person die. I know, I said quietly. The countdown reached 0. The magnetic rail hummed with power, and Elena dropped toward the surface of a planet that had killed literally hundreds of beings more suited to survival than any human had a right to be. The betting pool on the station gave her 4 minutes. I gave her 3. We were both very, very wrong. The descent took 90 seconds. 90 seconds of watching Elena's vital signs on my monitor while the entire station crew gathered behind me, waiting for the inevitable flatline. Her heart rate stayed steady at 72 beats per minute. 72! Like she was taking a leisurely walk instead of dropping into an atmosphere that could liquefy bone. She is humming, Yilla said, her translator picking up the audio feed. She was right. Elena was humming some kind of human melody, completely off-key, while her pod punched through cloud layers that registered pressures equivalent to being 3 kilometers underwater on most habitable planets. The pod hit surface with a crunch that made everyone in the observation deck wince. For 5 seconds, there was silence. Then Elena's voice crackled through the comm system. Well, that was fun. Bit bumpy at the end there. Qualix, you still with me? Your vitals are stable, I said, checking the readings again because surely they had to be wrong. How are you feeling? Like I am wearing a really aggressive hug, Elena replied. I could hear her moving around in the suit, metal grinding against metal. Pressure is reading at about 400 atmospheres. Suit compensation is holding at 70% capacity. Not bad for a first date with a murder planet. 400 atmospheres. The last contractor who, experienced those conditions had his exoskeleton compress into a cube roughly the size of my fist. Beginning surface scan, Elena continued, and I watched her helmet camera feed as she surveyed the landing zone. Titan IX's surface looked like someone had taken a normal planet and squeezed it until it screamed. The rock formations were compressed into impossible angles, and the atmosphere was so thick it looked like she was walking through liquid. "Got a crystal vein about 40 meters northeast," Elena said. "Heading that way now." Her movement was slow, deliberate, each step calculated. The suit's servos whined under the pressure, working overtime to let her maintain mobility. According to the safety guidelines, she should be nearly immobile at this depth. Instead, she was walking like she owned the place. "Extraction tools deployed," Elena announced, "starting harvest in 3, 2, 1. The drill she activated was a modified version of standard equipment, reinforced to handle extreme conditions. It screamed as it bit into the compressed rock, and I watched the power consumption spike dangerously high. "Elena, your power draw is exceeding safe parameters," I warned. "Define safe," she replied, laughter in her voice. "Because from where I am standing, nothing about this is safe, so we might as well commit to the bit." The first crystal came free with a crack that registered on the seismic monitors back on the station. Elena held it up to her helmet camera, and even through the grainy feed, I could see it gleaming with that peculiar iridescence that made compression crystals so valuable. "Beautiful," she breathed. "Okay, 19 more of these, and I hit my quota. Let us keep this party going." She worked for 47 minutes straight, extracting crystals with an efficiency that should have been impossible. Every movement was precise, conserved energy, minimal wasted motion. She talked the entire time, providing a running commentary that alternated between technical observations and what I eventually realized was sarcasm about the working conditions. "You know what this place needs?" Elena said, wrestling another crystal free. "A nice coffee shop. Maybe some mood lighting. Really class up the joint." "Elena, I am reading a pressure fluctuation in your suit's left leg seal," I said, alarm creeping into my voice. "Yeah, I noticed that about 10 minutes ago," she replied casually. Too casually. 10 minutes, I nearly shouted, my vocal cords vibrating at frequencies that made Yilla flinch. "Elena, a seal failure at those pressures will kill you in seconds. You need to abort immediately." "Abort? I am just getting started," Elena said, and I watched in horror as she adjusted her stance, putting more weight on the compromised leg. Besides, I figured out something interesting. If I vent pressure through the damaged seal in controlled bursts, it actually helps with mobility. Watch this. She executed a movement that should have been impossible in a pressure suit. A spin, followed by a precise strike with her extraction tool that freed 3 crystals simultaneously. The leak in her suit hissed with each motion, releasing tiny jets of atmosphere that her suit's compensation systems struggled to counterbalance. "That is not how pressure suits work," I said. "You are going to rupture the entire seal." "Not if I do it right," Elena countered. "Trust me, I once had to patch a submarine with nothing but duct tape and confidence. This is basically the same thing, just with more crushing death involved." Bavron appeared at my shoulder, all 4 of his eye stalks focused on the monitor. "What is she doing?" "I have absolutely no idea," I admitted. "But somehow it is working." Elena had collected 14 crystals when the alarm started. Every monitor on my console lit up red simultaneously, and the atmospheric pressure readings for Titan IX's surface began climbing at a rate that made my blood run cold. "Pressure storm," Yilla whispered. "A big one." I activated the emergency channel, Elena, you have a Category 5 pressure storm incoming. Estimated arrival in 18 minutes. You need to get to the extraction pod now. There was a pause. Then Elena said, Qualix, I am looking at a crystal deposit here that is bigger than anything in the consortium records. We are talking about a formation that could fund this station for the next 5 years. I am less than 30 meters from it. You will be less than 30 meters from being paced if you do not evacuate, I said. The storm will exceed 600 atmospheres. Your suit cannot handle that. My suit cannot handle that if I am on the surface, Elena said. I watched her helmet camera pan across the terrain until it focused on a fissure in the compressed rock. But what if I am not on the surface? No, I said immediately. Absolutely not. You are not suggesting what I think you are suggesting. I am absolutely suggesting what you think I am suggesting, Elena replied, already moving toward the fissure. That crack goes down at least 50 meters. If I can get deep enough, the surrounding rock will help distribute the pressure load. Basic physics. Basic insanity, I corrected. Elena, that fissure could collapse. You could get trapped. You will die down there. Probably, Elena agreed. But that crystal deposit is right on the other side of this crack, and I did not come all this way to leave empty-handed, going dark for a bit. Do not wait up. And then she cut communications. Just like that. Severed the connection and dropped into a planet-side fissure, while a pressure storm capable of flattening reinforced structures bore down on her position. Through the external cameras mounted on her suit, I watched her descend into darkness. Her helmet light the only illumination in a crack barely wider than her shoulders. Time to impact? Bavran asked quietly. 14 minutes, Yella said, her voice hollow. We watched the external feeds as long as we could. The storm hit the surface like a hammer, and every camera went dark. The seismic readings spiked off the charts. Emergency protocols activated automatically, sealing blast shields over the observation windows. Elena's vital signs flatlined. The entire station fell silent. 2 hours and 37 minutes passed. I know because I stared at the chronometer the entire time, watching each second tick by like a countdown to nothing. Bavran had officially declared the operation a loss. Lilith had prepared the incident report. Torvak had sealed Elena's personal belongings for return to Earth. The betting pool had paid out. Everyone assumed she was dead. Everyone except me, and only because I was too stubborn to stop monitoring the sensors. Which is why I was the only one in the observation deck when the impossible happened. A signal. Faint, intermittent, but unmistakably from Elena's suit transponder. No, I whispered, checking the readings 3 times. No, that is not possible. The signal strengthened. Vital signs appeared on my screen. Heart rate elevated but stable. Blood oxygen levels lower than optimal, but within survivable range. And she was moving. Actually moving, heading back toward the surface. I activated the station-wide intercom with trembling hands. Bavran, get to the observation deck now. She is alive. The response was immediate. Within 90 seconds, half the station crew had crammed into the space behind my console, all of them staring at the monitors like they were witnessing a religious event. Maybe they were. The external cameras picked her up 20 minutes later, emerging from the fissure like some kind of vengeful spirit. Her suit was a disaster. The left leg seal was held together with what appeared to be melted crystal and sheer willpower. Scorch marks covered the torso plating. One of her shoulder joints was completely exposed, the protective casing torn away. But she was walking, dragging behind her a cargo net loaded with crystals that glinted even through the murky atmosphere. Station, this is Elena. Her voice crackled through the comm, hoarse but unmistakably amused. Sorry about going dark. Got a bit busy down there. Requesting extraction pod deployment at my coordinates. Also, I am going to need a really long shower and maybe a drink. Or 5. Definitely 5. I could not form words. I just stared at the screen where her vital signs displayed readings that should not exist. Yilla made a sound like air escaping from a punctured container. Bavron's eye stalks went completely rigid. Elena, I finally managed, how are you alive? Honestly, spite, mostly, she replied. I watched her camera feed as she trudged toward the extraction point, each step labored but determined. Also, turns out that when you get deep enough into solid rock, pressure equalizes in really interesting ways. I spent most of the storm squeezed into a pocket about the size of a closet, holding my breath and thinking about all the terrible life choices that led me there. Good times. Your suit should have failed, Lilith said, her medical scanner already running remote diagnostics. The integrity readings I am seeing are below catastrophic thresholds. Yeah, about that, Elena said. I may have had to do some field repairs. There was this moment where I thought, you know what would be great right now? If I could use these superheated compression crystals as emergency welding material. Spoiler alert, you totally can. It is a terrible idea and I do not recommend it, but you can. She had welded her suit back together, with crystals, while trapped underground during a pressure storm, on a planet that killed nearly everything that touched it. The crystal deposit? Bavron asked, his voice barely functional. In the bag, Elena confirmed. All 47 pieces of it. Premium grade, minimal fracturing, absolutely gorgeous specimens. You are welcome, by the way. I also grabbed some bonus materials I found while taking a little detour through the collapsed section. Pressure-formed minerals that I've never seen before. Figured the research division might want to take a look. The extraction pod launched automatically, guided by her transponder. I watched it descend through the atmosphere, lock onto her position, and begin the retrieval sequence. Every sensor on my console told me this was real, but my brain refused to accept it. Elena, I said slowly, you need to explain something to me. How did a human, a species we classified as fragile Deathworlders, survive conditions that have killed beings 3 times your size with evolutionary adaptations specifically for pressure resistance? There was a long pause. Then Elena laughed. Actually laughed, a sound that bordered on slightly unhinged. Qualix, you want to know the funny thing about humans? We are not adapted for pressure resistance. We are adapted for everything resistance. Our planet did not give us one hostile environment to overcome. It gave us all of them. Oceans, mountains, deserts, tundra, volcanic regions, areas with air so thin you cannot breathe. Areas with pressure so high your body wants to implode. We learned to survive in all of it. The extraction pod sealed around her, and I watched her vitals stabilize as the pressure normalized. She continued talking, her voice gaining strength. You know what we used to do for fun on Earth? We would dive to depths that would crush your equipment. We would climb mountains where the air is too thin to sustain life. We would explore caves that have never seen sunlight, wade through swamps filled with diseases, and live in places where the temperature fluctuates enough to kill most species. And we did it not because we had to, but because we were curious about what was down there, up there, over there. The pod cleared the atmosphere, and I initiated the docking sequence. My hands were still shaking. So, when you tell me Titan 9 is deadly, Elena continued, what I... Here is that it is just another environment to understand and adapt to. Pressure is not my enemy. It is just physics. And humans have been telling physics to go screw itself since we first decided to throw rocks at prey that could eat us. The pod docked with a clang that echoed through the station. The airlock cycled. The inner door opened. Elena stepped out of her ruined suit, looking exhausted, battered, and absolutely insufferable. She was grinning. "So," she said, looking directly at me, "when do we schedule the next extraction run? Because I noticed at least 3 more crystal veins down there that are just begging for attention." Bavron stepped forward, his translator working overtime to process whatever complex emotion he was experiencing. "Contractor Elena, the consortium would like to offer you an extended contract. Full benefits, hazard pay multiplied by a factor of 6, and priority access to any high-risk extraction operations." "Sounds great," Elena said. "Quick question, though. Do you have any positions available for volcano mining? I heard there is good money in thermal extraction, and honestly, things are getting too easy around here." I looked at Yilla. Yilla looked at Torvak. Torvak looked at Lilath. We all looked at Elena, who was casually discussing working inside active volcanoes like she was talking about weekend plans. "You are insane," I said. "Yep," Elena agreed cheerfully, "but I am also really good at my job. So, about those volcanoes?" Bavron made that gurgling sigh again, but this time it sounded almost fond. "I will have the contracts prepared. Qualix will remain your liaison." "Perfect," Elena said, clapping me on the shoulder with enough force to make me stumble. "We are going to have so much fun, buddy. Just wait until I tell you about my ideas for mining gas giants. I have theories." As she walked away, trailing technicians and medical staff, I realized something that fundamentally changed my understanding of the universe. Humans do not just survive pressure. They were born in it, shaped by it, forged by an entire planet that spent millions of years trying to kill them and failed. They do not overcome hostile environments. They make the environments understand who is really in charge. And the truly terrifying part? Elena was not special among her species. She was just another human doing what humans do. Which meant there were billions more like her out there, looking at the galaxy's deadliest places and thinking, yeah, I could work with that. I filed my incident report that night. Under cause of survival, I wrote, "Subject is human. No further explanation available." Bavron approved it without comment. 3 weeks later, Elena departed for the volcanic mining operation on Pyros 12, humming that same off-key melody. I watched her shuttle disappear into the distance and wondered, not for the first time, what humanity would do once they ran out of impossible things to survive. Then I remembered. They would just find new impossible things, or create them. That is what Deathworlders do.